Hey, this is Chris from Stockspot, and in this video I'm going to be talking about stock tipping newsletters. You know the ones that are out there promising to help you find the next CSL or Afterpay for your portfolio. And actually I have a bit of history in stock tipping newsletters because when I was a young kid I actually did some summer work experience at what was one of the most popular stock tipping newsletters of the time, called Ian Huntley's Your Money Weekly. And this was a very popular stock tipping newsletter that generally looked at the large cap stocks in Australia and had buy or sell or hold recommendations and advice on what you should do if these holdings were in your portfolio. And I think there's two things a lot of people miss when it comes to these stock tipping newsletters that I eventually learnt having done some work experience with them. And let me say, first of all, when I was a kid doing work experience at these places, as a bit of an investing nerd, I thought it was the coolest thing ever that these people who were working at these newsletters, their job was to analyze stocks and come up with whether they were buys or sells. And what was fascinating was that the track records that these newsletters were purporting to have were always fantastic. Whether it was that newsletter or others, I've never seen a stock tipping newsletter that didn't have a fantastic track record. Now I know a lot more about the track records of fund managers and how difficult it is to beat the market. It's made me really look a bit further into these track records. And what I've discovered is that there is no consistent or regulated approach to how stock tipping newsletters show their performance, which means that a lot of fudging can happen behind the scenes in how they actually calculate performance. You know, when they're showing that the stocks entered or exited their portfolio, the cost assumptions and brokerage assumptions they're making of buying and selling them. Ultimately, I think any stock tipping newsletter that's explaining their strong track record, you should be questioning, because it's really up to them to calculate what those returns look like. And there's a lot of opportunities, if you're not actually managing money, to fudge returns. And so I wouldn't put a lot of weight onto those track records that they're really pushing. But I think it goes to a second point, which I only really later realized as well, which is that the analysts and writers and journalists working for these stock tipping newsletters, whether they're the online form or the ones that you get sent to your home in a physical newsletter, if these analysts and journalists are any good, they end up moving on to investment bank research houses or fund managers or hedge funds, where they actually get paid better for their skills. They get adequately paid for that talent that they have for picking stocks. And so what it leads to is a bit of an adverse selection bias over time, where the people who end up working in these newsletters are the ones that don't necessarily have the skills and capabilities to be generating these consistent ideas that generate alpha for your portfolio. And so typically what happens over time is the skills go to where the money is, and that's not in stock tipping newsletters. So it's very difficult for these newsletters to retain really talented analysts and people who are good at picking stocks to write for them. And so what that's taught me is really these stock tipping newsletters, they can be great entertainment, they can be fun to read, it can be a great way to learn about what businesses do, but I wouldn't be putting any weight whatsoever onto their buy, sell or hold recommendations, just like I wouldn't put any onto actual fund managers. But certainly stock tipping newsletters, in my opinion, are not worth the money that people pay for them. And there are thousands of people, I think, in Australia wasting millions of dollars a year on paying for stock tips that aren't really worth it. You know, our approach certainly is not to try and pick these stocks at Stockspot, is just to invest in the whole market and really ignore what analysts, what fund managers, or what anyone really is saying about whether stocks are overvalued or undervalued. And that's really the ultimate lesson I had from working at fund managers, at investment banks and at stock tipping newsletters, is that ultimately it is so hard for even these professionals to beat the market. You're better off just owning the market instead.